That's so funny. You got a pair of red lips on you. Don't take my lips off.
Yo, what's up, fam? We're the Callaways.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Derek. And this is
Beating Heart. We need a theme song.
What would you think the theme song ought to be?
Bow, 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 bow,
Oh, I
bow.
thought you was finna
Bow,
say
bow,
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 bow.
bow, bow. Beating
Bow,
heart, yeah. Beating heart. Beating heart. Bow, 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 yeah. So ratchet.
So, once again, thank you for joining us as we continue in the discussion of conscious and effective communication. So far, we've shared the different tips, the different principles that we've learned and that we apply in our marriage. And basically, we just want to give those same tips, those same principles to you all to actually help, your marriage thrive, your marriage grow as well. And so today, we want to kind of talk about understanding how your spouse communicates.
Yeah, this topic I feel like is one of the topics that we kind of overlook. But it's very important. It's very important in marriages because if you don't understand how your spouse communicate, how can you communicate?
Right.
And so that's the topic that we want to bring to you guys on tonight. And I hope that this open doors in your marriage, your relationship, to bring you to a new level. So with that being said, yes, we want to talk about understanding your spouse, how they communicate. And so as most of y'all know, your girl is a hairstylist, so I have therapy sessions with my clients. And so whenever I'm talking to most of my ladies clients, if they're going through anything, dealing with their relationships, dealing with their marriages, it's this one thing that I always hear, and it's that they don't communicate how I communicate. I mean, me and my family, we talk and they shut down and they don't say anything. And so sometimes whenever I be listening, I be like, yeah, well, it's a different. We all communicate in different ways, and sometimes the way we communicate depends on how we grew up. Like for me in my household, I wasn't raised in a home where we really talked or expressed how we felt or expressed our feelings. I didn't come up in a home like that, and I also came up in a home where my mom and my dad fought a lot. So for me, whenever I got older, my style of communication was always to fight. Yes, your girl Pam is a fighter. So whenever I got in a relationship, my mindset was, okay, well, I saw my mom go through this with my dad, and I always said, hey, when I get in a relationship, I'm gonna be the one who initiate the fight. I'm not gonna be the one who sit back and take the punches or the hits. So that was my style of communicating when we got into a relationship, because of the mindset that I had of how I was brought, the things that I saw in my home. That's how I communicated. My first thing was whenever we get in an argument, the first thing was to start fighting, to hit, kick, scratch, punch, whatever I needed to do. That was my style of communicate. And also because I didn't grow up being able to express my feelings, I didn't know how to express what I was feeling inside. And for me, the way that I communicate, especially like in heated moments, if it's a heated moment, anything that's coming out of my mouth is just me just saying anything, because I'm just trying to say anything to hurt your feelings, to make you feel some type of way, to downgrade you. That was my thing. But however, in order for me to properly communicate with my husband now, if I'm heated in that moment, I gotta take a moment so that I can process what it is I'm feeling in that moment, and to be able to communicate it properly to him, so we don't end up in a heated, hot. We don't fist fight no more, but hey,
we used to fight.
So that was the way I communicate, and not saying that it's healthy or anything, but that was my style. But thank God that he came in and changed it up for me. So we have made communication in our house like a major thing. It's been 16 years for us, so things didn't start off, good. But however, through the growth and development of our marriage, we've been able to communicate in new and better, healthy ways. Yeah. You want to talk about, the way that you communicate?
I know for me, my style of communicating was different, was a whole lot different from hers, which, initially at the beginning of our relationship was kind of something that threw me off, because she was like you say, she always wanted to fight when we got to a place of arguments or disagreement. And, from hearing, how she grew up, the household she grew up in and what she saw. But for me, it was totally different. I didn't grow up in a household with both parents to see a style of communication or a form of communication, whether it was a negative or a positive. I didn't have that. For me, I grew up in a foster care system, so my style of communication was to just internalize everything that I was feeling, internalizing, whatever I was going through, because I didn't feel like I knew or had a relationship with anyone to a level where I felt comfortable enough to let them know what I was going through or know what I was experiencing. Because for me, every household that you went to was basically strangers, and so I didn't have that comfort zone. And then eventually, I moved in with my grandmothers, and this is two women, a mother and a daughter, and they didn't communicate. So for me, it just was a continuation of that process of just internalizing what I feel. And so once I met my wife, that was still my method, but it caused a imbalance between us with her style of communication and my style of communication, because how I communicated was more of a don't say nothing. And then for her, it triggered her wanting to fight, because it was like, you're not speaking or you're not saying, and it's like I'm just in one place and she's in another dealing with her feelings and her emotions by herself. But actually she's not by herself. I just don't know how to verbally communicate how I'm feeling. And so, in the beginning of our relationship, it caused a lot of problems. Like I said, we fought a lot. But I do thank God for the us evolving as people, as individuals, as well as a couple, to where we are now. We still have a lot more growing to do, but we communicate with each other so much better.
Yeah, communication is key in a marriage. I don't care what nobody say. It's very vital in a relationship. And so, like we were saying, just understanding how your spouse communicate. I mean, if I had anything to tell any couple, like before you really get into like dating somebody, this needs to be something that is brought up in the beginning. I know, like sometimes, like we just want to jump in and go on all these dates and we want to hop into the good parts. But however, you really need to...
What's the good part? Talking about sex?
Yeah, that part. But you really need to sit down and understand who you're dating or who you're getting into a covenant, a marriage with. That's why it's so important, like even married couples, when they decide to set a date to get married, to get counseling, because you get to go in deeper of things you haven't asked in the beginning. In the beginning, you need to sit down and you need to get to know the person that you're dating. Ask how they were raised. Ask how they communicate, because that tells a lot. Because if they grew up in a home where they wasn't allowed to express their feeling, whenever it comes to them having to express their feelings, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna shut down. Or, they do have some families, that shows that love. They allow, the children to express how they feel, and they're able to have a open dialogue where they're communicating properly. But if you put a person who comes from a household where, they're not communicating, then you get somebody else who communicates, then, it's always going to be a clash. But one thing that I will tell people is don't beat your spouse down because they don't communicate the way that you communicate. Like, don't beat them down. I think earlier I was reading this article about understanding how, to properly communicate with your spouse. And one thing that they was talking about is, what did I tell you this morning? Anywho.
We talk about a lot.
We talk about it, so much to talk about it and communicate. But yes, don't beat your spouse down because they don't communicate the way you communicate. Y'all both have to come to a place where y'all can work together and find a solution, or find a place where y'all can, set the tone to be able to communicate with each other without forcing, how you communicate on the other spouse, if that makes sense. You want to kind of break that down a little bit?
What usually tend to happen is we'll try to say whose style of communication is right, and say that the other person's style of communication is wrong. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more so that there has not been a balance established between both sides to say, all right, you were brought up in this environment, I was brought up in this environment, but now we're looking to create a whole separate environment to what you were brought up in and what I was brought up in, because whether those were healthy or unhealthy, we need to find out what's best for us now, and find out what style and what ways of communication allows both of us to be able to express ourselves freely without the arguments, without the unnecessary raising of voices or fighting or whatever it may be. So I think that's the key, and that's the goal for us now as married people, to know where we come from and express those things to our spouse, but then sit down and say, okay, where do we go from here now? What do we establish as boundaries? What do we establish as green lights for how we communicate now, so that we're not in a repeated cycle where I'm using my words to bash you or to beat you down, or I'm not expressing myself at all, and then you feeling like, you can't talk to me, or I don't talk to you, or I'm being secretive about something, or whatever it may be. So I believe that just establishing that common ground for your marriage is important for how you go on within it in your communication.
Yeah, and also realizing we have to take this, saying off, oh, this is me, this how I was raised, and this is what you're gonna get. Because just because you was brought up or you was taught to communicate that way, it doesn't mean that it's the healthiest for your relationship. So like the article that I did read, that's what they was talking about. Just because you communicate the way you communicate doesn't always mean it's the healthiest. But however, in a relationship, because you love your spouse the way that you love them, that you won't just accept the unhealthy habit or unhealthy communication, but you will love them through it to help them grow and to find a better way to communicate. Yeah,
and I think that also comes with one thing I think also is important for us to understand in marriages is compromising. Is that we have to, you sometimes you're going to have to let down whatever wall or whatever mindset that your way of doing things is right, and compromise to accept or to see things the way that your spouse sees them. And I think with coming up with different backgrounds and different forms of communication, when I'm willing to compromise and understand that, okay, because he or she was brought up in this environment, that's why they communicate the way they do. So it might be totally opposite from what I grew up seeing or doing, but I'm still willing to, venture into where their what they were brought up in. And I'm not saying that if they were brought up in an environment where they fought, that you're saying, okay, well, shoot, I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna fight with her too, and we're just gonna be fighting. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, begin to understand what causes your spouse to get to that place to make them want to fight. And that thing might be like, for us, I had to realize that my withholding and not expressing made her, turn into the Hulk and, make her want to fight. So I had to realize that, you know what? I'm going to have to communicate with her. I can't internalize everything. I have to express myself and what I'm feeling and these things to her, so that she can have a different way of communicating. I don't want to make her feel like, okay, she has to go back to that place of communicating where fighting is a necessity. I want to help her, help us create an atmosphere where we can communicate with each other without having to put our hands on each other. Mm-hmm. Of course, you might, you're going to have disagreements. And, that don't mean that we got to stop talking to each other. That don't mean we stay mad the rest of the night because of a disagreement. No, we going to disagree, and then we going to find out, all right, what's the next step to that? Yeah. And those are the things, those are still forms of communicating. And I think those are the things that actually help with those barriers of communication as well, is not getting to the place where, boom, we have two different styles of communicating. We're seeing things two different ways. Either we gonna clash or somebody gonna be conquered. No, let's find that way to where now we find out what the problem is, and let's communicate our way through it.
Yeah. I like what you was talking about, the compromise. Oh man, compromise is like, I used to be saying compromise.
We need the compromise.
But anyway, yes, compromising is like, oh man, that's the number one thing you're gonna be doing in your relationship. Because like I said in the beginning, we used to fight a lot, but now, like I said early on, whenever we decided to, get married and allow God to be a part of it, that's what was one of the things that I had to work on. It was something that I realized, like, hey, this is not good, only make the situation worse. And so there was something that I saw that I need to change, and I decided to change. It was a day-by-day process, but we finally got to the point where we weren't fighting, throwing stuff, breaking stuff, kicking down doors.
That's all her MO.
We wasn't leaving the house. Now, like, when we have disagreements, I wouldn't say that we really have arguments, but we have a lot of disagreements. But however, because now we could communicate, there's no one leaving the house. Like, in our house, we cannot leave the house when we're angry. We cannot sleep in separate. We got to go to bed together at night. However, we give ourselves time to calm down, and then we come back and we talk about it. Because like I say, for me, I have to process stuff, to get a full understanding of what took place, what happened, how I'm feeling. But yeah, we finally got to a place where, we can have a disagreement, but we can talk about it, find a solution, and still continue out our day. We're not about to carry out the day just mad the whole time. So yes, and there are some things. See, being married to this man right here, he just do so much, and but there are so many things that I had to compromise on, because if I don't, it'll be like a battle on every situation. See, we got to understand what battles to fight, right, and what battles to let go. But however, like I say, this topic of communication is amazing. There's so many areas, so many things that we can talk about, but we can't do all of that in this video. But however, if you guys do not follow us on social media, on Instagram, go ahead and follow us on Instagram at BeatingHeart Marriage Ministry. We post content about marriage tips, different things dealing with communication. So in case we cannot get everything in these videos, if you follow us, I promise you will not be disappointed. We will have things on there to share with you guys that will help your marriage in so many ways.
Yeah, and all that information is in the link in the description, so you can go and check that out. Also, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. The bell is always important. And that way, like I said, man, we can grow together, that our marriages can thrive together. And like I said, as we learn and as we grow in marriage, you learn and you grow in marriage. And as always, if you have any questions that you would like for us to answer or anything to that matter, be sure to leave that in the comment section down below as well. And we would love to answer those questions for you. With that being said, man, we thank you once again for just giving us your ear on tonight. We pray that you heard something that was able to help your marriage, something that you could take away, something that you could apply. Don't just listen for stuff to point and say that your spouse could do. Find something that we're speaking and that we're saying that you know you can apply and operate in those things, and I guarantee you'll see the outcome change for the better. With that being said,
before we let y'all go, I want to say this. If you have not taken out the time to understand how your spouse communicate, this is the right time to sit down, have a conversation with your spouse, ask those questions. If y'all been together for a long time, I'm quite sure you know how they was brought up, how they were raised. But let this be a time where you and your spouse can get to know and understand how each other. Let that be
homework.
Yeah, let that be homework. Get to know how your spouse communicate, and y'all come up with something to bring the two communication. What you call it?
I don't know, but let the two become one.
But again, we thank you guys for tuning in with us on tonight. We enjoy being here with y'all on tonight. Like we said, go follow us, like us, share this, send this to someone who needs it. Let it be a blessing to not only you, but to other married and engaged people. And like always, we love you guys and we look forward to the next video. And this is Beating Heart.